A star goalie prospect that's been linked to the Habs before has once again been linked to the Montreal Canadiens in Yaroslav Askarov. On a recent 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman dove into how the Predators are looking to move him, and a lot of Habs fans have been telling us that this is the perfect fit. We got to dive into this whole thing. Plus, ESPN released their points predictions for every Habs player, and honestly, some of the craziest stuff we've seen. That plus a lineup prediction. Those go hand in hand, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest, and we're not even going to hesitate. We're going to start hot. We're going to start with Yaroslav Askarov. Jesse, I'm going to start this right away by saying, no, we're not doing this. Not at this point, because we've heard so many talks about Yaroslav Askarov in the past, and yes, he is an amazing goalie prospect. You take a look at his stats, he is phenomenal. He has done really well in the AHL. Of course, 5 games in the playoffs last year, not so great. But he's been one of the top NHL goalie prospects for a long time. He's a former 11th overall pick. And there were rumors that Kent Hughes turned down an offer that sent Askarov to Montreal for the 5th overall pick. But it was a recent episode of 32 Thoughts, Jesse, without Jeff Merrick. So sad. Anyway, they're looking for either an established NHL player who makes sense to acquire for Askarov, that's Nashville, of course, or another high-level prospect who isn't a goaltender. So a forward or defenseman. That's what the Predators are seeking. When we're talking about the Habs, Jesse, when I hear high profile, to me, I'm thinking Reinbacher, Hudson level or above. Some people might argue Mailloux as well. But to me, at this point, with the goalies the Habs have in the system, with Primeau still being pretty young, Monty is still pretty young by goalie standards, Fowler in the system, Dobeš looks decent. For the price that Nashville's going to ask for him, this is just like an immediate for me. I was like, get this off my screen. I don't want to hear about this guy for now, even though he's great and I do really like him.
Do you think that they would take Mailloux for Askarov?
I don't think they would. Not based on what they asked at the draft.
Well, it's for sure that like elite level goaltending is very useful for sure, but I think the Montreal Canadiens need to focus a lot more on putting pucks in the opposition net rather than kind of protecting theirs, right? Like if Primeau of Montembeault weren't so young and so good, I'd be a lot more interested in this. If we didn't have a Jacob Fowler coming up, right? Because you can't have too many sheriffs in town. Just ask Arber, right? It's like you couldn't have Jacob Fowler and Askarov on the same team. So because Fowler's coming up, because he's just a firecracker to have some faith, it's like it makes me want to be patient, even though it's like because we have a lot of prospects, you're thinking, oh, like maybe one of our B tier type of prospects, and we can kind of snag that one front. I think you're right, Josh, that, based off the premium they said in the past, that probably wouldn't fly, right? So it's about being patient, and it's about the Habs right now, I think, putting their focus more on getting their goal production up more than anything else right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's yet to be seen if he can consistently score goalie goals on empty nets. But, like, at the same time, you're right. Like, it's not bad to have a couple of elite goalies. I mean, look at what the Bruins have done. Of course, Ullmark and Swayman was amazing together. They were both fairly young, Ullmark being a decent bit older, of course. But, yeah, like, I just don't see a world where this makes a ton of sense. Like, there's other needs the Montreal Canadiens could go after, and the only way I would do this trade is if it was for a prospect that I wouldn't mind losing. And if you're Nashville, you're looking to trade him, you're losing leverage every day, I'm sure, but at the same time, you're not going to trade him if it's not for someone really big. So let us know down below what you guys think about Yaroslav Askarov. I think he's a phenomenal prospect. I think wherever he ends up, he'll be great. I just don't think that team makes sense to be the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to move on, Jesse. We're starting to get closer and closer every single day to next season. And as much as we love to look at the lineups, looking at realistic projections is not quite as fun as we thought, okay? Most realistic projections don't have all the prospects we want to see playing next season, but some have a few. And Marc Dumont did a recent article going over who he thinks the Habs lines should be. Of course, the article linked down below, as always. I wanted to go through some of them. So this is kind of the forward depth chart. This is not the lineup. It's, Caufield, we got Harvey Pinard hurt. The left wing is weak, Jesse. But we got lots of right wingers. We got lots of centermen. And his ultimate lineup that he came up with is this. Of course, Caufield, Suzuki, Slaf, Newhook, Dach, Roy, Gallagher, Dvorak, Armia, Barré-Boulet, Evans, and Anderson with Pezzetta as an extra. Now, he didn't really dive into the defense there too much, but looking at this, was there anything that stood out to you? Because honestly, what stood out to me was the fact that the top six is exactly what both of us, I think, have been saying for a while. It still hurts me to see Evans on the fourth line, and I get it. Like, you play him a lot in the penalty kill. Barré-Boulet, I'm still not sold on. I'm still thinking, like, maybe you can give a shot to a younger guy. But overall, as much as we want to see some young prospects make the team, I think this is actually realistic, which makes it, I guess, a little less fun than I was thinking.
Yeah, well, here we're not showing our young defenders, right? Where I think that's where we have the movement with Hudson. Reinbacher remains to be seen there as well, right? But this is a pretty good lineup prediction. For those first two lines, like you said, Josh, this is what we would prefer if we were that, coach of the Montreal Canadiens. This is what we would be putting out on the ice. Why? Because for that first line to be successful, you need to pack a punch in that second line. That first line isn't going to get the air they need to breathe without kind of that second line. So that means you got to jam pack it as much as possible. Of course, in his first prediction, he's having Nuhukas at 3C, barring not having these injuries, right? But I would say, we just don't have the depth for that right now. So I definitely agree with this take of with the team as it is right now, you definitely having Newhook as a 3C at some point is a premium. I think he can take advantage of other 3Cs. But for right now, you definitely want to have this all together. So once we get into the bottom six, I think there's definitely a couple points, whether Andre Barré-Boulet or whether Anderson should be a little bit higher up on the lineup. For the most part, I think this is pretty on point, right? You're gonna have to feel like Dvorak there. He's gonna be getting his time to kind of showcase his skill for Kent Hughes there. So overall, though, I think this is a pretty good lineup.
Do you think that at this point, I mean, pure talent wise, and I think based on what we've been saying and what a lot of people have been saying, yeah, Waugh deserves to be on the second line. I honestly can absolutely see a world where Waugh starts on like the third or fourth line. I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, he looked great in the NHL, but he had like 9 points in 20 odd games. It wouldn't shock me to see them try something different. Toss Gallagher up on that second line or something. Had a great second half of the season. You look at training camp, we've often seen them try Anderson with various line combinations to try and get him going. That would be my one thing. Like, as much as this is the top six I would want, and probably that I would predict, it would not surprise me to see one of Gallagher or Anderson sneak into that top six, as much as a lot of people are going to hate that down below.
No, this is the lineup that we would want, right? But I think that that's the predictable take is like, this is how the NHL works. Like seniority, you have to earn it. Like for sure, I think it's going to start on that third line, like you said, probably like an Armia, Gallagher, Anderson, maybe on that second line, right? Probably more of an Armia type situation there on that second. And then with Waugh taking his place as the season goes on, like we know it's going to happen, but they're still going to make Waugh earn it, which you could argue is still kind of a good thing, making him have to, he'll be the better for it once that time. But I'd say like even a quarter to midway in the season, for sure, we're seeing Joshua Waugh on that second line with Newey and Kirby Dach.
Yeah, as high as I am on him, again, he's still got to prove it a little bit more. I think you give him a shot. He's going to get the shot. He's going to get there eventually. Let us know down below what you think of that lineup. Do you agree or disagree? Because it kind of has a direct implication with what we're about to show you. Now, ESPN released their fantasy hockey stuff. Of course, we're getting around to fantasy season, and they were releasing some of their point predictions for Montreal Canadiens players. Oh boy. Some of them are not bad, I gotta say. Some of them are not bad. Now, I believe a lot of this is analytics-based. They have their own in-house algorithms probably for a lot of stuff, which probably indicates why some of their calculations are a bit weird. Also, they had Mark Streit on this list. He was 14th. I don't even... Look, ESPN has, despite their coverage of the NHL now, they're still far behind. Mark Streit, really? Otto Leskinen right at the bottom, too, who also hasn't played in North America for 2 years. Absolutely wild. But we're not here to crap on ESPN. We're here to dive into these. I'm actually going to make this a bit bigger. So the first few here, number 1, 2, and 3 on the Habs in terms of fantasy value. They had Suzuki predicting a point per game, Jesse. 83 points. They got 53 points out of Matheson, a slight drop from last year, which I really like. And they got Caufield. They have him only at 27 goals, playing only 78 games. I think the goal total is going to be higher than what they predict here. Again, it's like model-based. They actually even say that he's due for some positive regression back up to a higher shooting percentage. Not a whole lot to disagree with here. I think it's awesome they have Nick Suzuki's point per game. I think Caufield's goals could be a little higher. We're going to get into some other guys in a minute, but you kind of on the same page with those two guys?
Yeah, that's what makes it curious, them saying that it'll balance out with the shooting percentage, because like Caufield, right? Like I think he's going to have more goals scored than last year for sure, right? That shooting percentage, like that's going to balance out. So it's weird that they kind of say that it's going to balance out the shooting percentage, but they don't really reflect that in his goal totals. That being said, sticking with the first line, like Slav, pretty fair take, with him taking a jump up with 63 points, 26 goals. That being said, I think that 30 goals is totally reachable for Slafkovsky this year, right? We know he scored 20 goals. Only half of that was played on the first line. You have to feel like if he was playing another 40 games on the first line, the chances to score 10 more goals, there's a high likelihood of that, right? So, I think that being said, 26 goals would still be solid for the young man. But I'm liking that Suzuki's getting that point per game praise, because that alone, once we get that, that's going to mark a shift for this team that's really going to be huge to really kind of build up on this rebuild.
Yeah, exactly. Like, as soon as he hits that, like you said, that is the TSN turning point, or ESPN turning point, I guess. But yeah, like Slav, you know what, though? As much as I want him to get 30 goals, this actually feels like really reasonable to me. 63 points, 26 goal season. This is kind of like, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see that. The fact that they also said Guhle, he doesn't have enough scoring production to be worth a selection. I mean, look, I get it, but again, their point prediction is based on 1 year where he was playing. You know, he's probably going to play similar minutes this year against tough opposition, probably on his offside. So maybe the point production won't come, but I imagine he'll develop a bit. But Jesse, these guys, you know, it's at least reasonable. You can see where they're coming from. This next one doesn't make any sense to me. When I saw the point total, I thought they predicted him to get injured again. But they have Kirby Dach playing 67 games, so I guess they do predict an injury, getting 30 points in 67 games. This, to me, is the most outrageous prediction on this entire Montreal Canadiens roster. They didn't do predictions for guys like Harris and like Barron, who they don't expect to really be picked in pretty much any league, which I guess is fair. But this, to me, is wild. He is this guy that so many Habs fans are clamoring for, saying he's going to have a breakout year this year. And I get maybe being, you know, okay, a bit iffy on him. But, and I know it's like statistics based. You probably look at his past season, look at his production, but this doesn't make any sense based on when he has been healthy for Montreal. This, to me, is one of the most outrageous predictions I think I've ever seen. Now, again, is it possible he does this? Yeah, but I think it's so unlikely that it kind of makes me sick. They have Newhook getting like 14 more points than Dach this year.
Well, that's just it. If you look at Kirby Dach, like from his track record, for sure he's had some histories, but like he got 38 points 2 years ago while missing 24 games.
I know.
Right? Like this is this is stats, things that he's already done, right? Like he's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. Dach is going to be a big reason why I believe this team kind of competes for a playoff spot. They won't necessarily get it, but I honestly, more and more, Josh, the more that I think about it, the more that I think about what Kirby Dach is going to bring to this team, I'm just visualizing them being in the mix a lot more, right? Those 1-goal games with this team growing up, let alone the addition of Dach and all these other great players that are going to be in the lineup. You know, just doing some quick math on that, you have to feel a lot better about the Habs than last year, right? So for me, it's like Dach, I see, you know, very much like 50 points this year, I think would be great. Something maybe similar to what Slaf did this year. But then he's going to be in line with the same sort of like jump that Slaf, I think, is going to do this year, going to 60, 70 points. I see that for Dach, not this year, but the year after, because he's just that good of a player. That's his pedigree.
Yeah, he's gonna be so good. I don't think that was an intentional like pep talk, but I felt the adrenaline rushing through my bones just then when you were saying that. Like watching Kirby Dach play, this man dominates the ice. When we have seen him, he is one of the best play drivers, other than Suzuki. I think he's maybe the best play driver, maybe even Slaf, who has some pretty great advanced stats in that department as well. But Kirby was so effective when he's been healthy. Again, that's a big question. How's he going to heal? How's he going to look recovering from that knee injury? You can definitely expect him to be maybe a step slower to start the season. Take him a little while to ramp up. But Jesse, I'm so pumped for this season. Let us know down below. What do you think of these point predictions? Should these guys be higher or lower? Suzuki, Slaf, and especially Kirby Dach. We'd love to hear from you, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching every single day. We really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.